Hello and welcome to a tactical history of Liverpool. When we last left Liverpool, they kicked off the 1969-70 season with 3 victories. They continued this excellent early form, going unbeaten in their first 9 matches to top the Football League. From there, their season had begun to unravel though. The first tasted defeat away to rivals Manchester United in mid-September, and since then had won just 2 league games. The majority of these matches were draws, but they lost away to Newcastle United and were thrashed 4-0 by newly promoted Derby County. The excellent start meant that despite this poor run of form they had only dropped to 3rd, far from a disaster, but they were already 6 points behind leaders Everton. We catch up with Liverpool in mid-November, smarting from a loss against Vitória Setúbal in the first leg of their Intercities Fairs Cup tie. They were to host West Ham United. With Martin Peters missing, rushed back to London due to the illness of his newborn son, only Bobby Moore and Jeff Hurst remained for the Hammers from the 11 we saw in episode 14. Trevor Brooking, Frank Lampard and Harry Redknapp made the step up to the first team, while Billy Bonds and Bobby Ferguson were signed from Charlton and Kilmarnock respectively. They finished 16th in 1967, 12th the next, then rose to 8th in 1969. They may not have been challenging for trophies, but there were at least signs of progress, although when we meet them they are sitting in 14th. Ron Greenwood set up his team in a 4-3-3 shape, with Moore in midfield behind Ronnie Boyce and Brooking. For Liverpool there was just one change from a side we saw in episode 23. With Steve Peplow making his debut in place of Roger Hunt. The Scouser joined Liverpool as an apprentice in 1966 and was finally given his chance after scoring 19 goals for the reserves the season prior. The spot was now up for grabs as there was a sense that aged 31, Hunt was getting a little long in the tooth. With Liverpool in poor form, Hunt had been dropped in October. Phil Bursma and Alec Lindsay tried in his place. Coming off the bench to score 2 goals against Southampton saw Hunt reinstated to the starting 11, but more poor results saw Hunt dropped again. Peplow given an opportunity this time. Liverpool lined up in their usual 4-2-4 formation. This match is also historically significant as it was the first episode of Match of the Day the BBC broadcast in colour. Our copy of the game is in black and white, but there is some colour footage we can intersperse when relevant. On paper, West Ham should have had the upper hand in midfield, with 3 men to Liverpool's 2, but in practice it was Liverpool that dominated this area of the pitch. Brooking was encouraged to get forward and join the attack when West Ham had the ball, meaning he was quite out of position when they lost it, while Moore, typically a centre-back, would drop very deep to defend. This meant that Boyce was often left alone in midfield. For Liverpool, Ian Callaghan was constantly coming inside into the midfield, while Bobby Graham would drop off the front line and Peplow would pull wide, allowing Peter Thompson to cut inside. Sometimes Graham and Peplow would swap roles, with Graham pulling wide and Peplow dropping off. West Ham appeared to have learned their lesson from episode 15, as they managed to keep Thompson relatively quiet by doubling up on him. Redknapp was brought back to help Bonds, who picked up an injury in the first half, as well as the forwards dropping back. Jeff Strong, Chris Lawler and Tommy Smith would all push forward into midfield. Able to dominate the middle of the pitch, Liverpool were constantly forcing West Ham back to defend. There was little respite for the Hammers, as Liverpool would pressure as soon as they lost possession and were always quick to claim the second balls. West Ham weren't helping themselves sometimes either, giving the ball away sloppily. For the most part, West Ham tried to play directly. However, Ron Yates was dominating in the air, and Smith was as aggressive as ever, stepping up to intercept the ball. West Ham did pose a threat on the counter with their speedy attackers, although Liverpool's defensive line did an excellent job of catching their forwards offside on several occasions. Slowing down their attacks would allow West Ham to get Lampard forward to cross from the left. Although Liverpool were clearly dominating, West Ham were defending well, forcing Liverpool into passing from side to side. Peplow and Graham pulling wide or dropping into midfield made it easier for Liverpool to work the ball forward, but it did sometimes leave them lacking a goal threat in the box. It became clear Liverpool's priorities had changed when Callaghan preferred to stay wide, looking to stretch play and cross rather than tucking into the congested middle, and Lawler began to pop up in attack. Nevertheless, it only took Liverpool until a bit past the midpoint of the first half to open the scoring. From a corner, Graham flicked the ball on at the near post, for Lawler to take a touch and finish, having been left free by Clyde Best.
The goal was actually a work goal. I mean, we have practiced this, and Bobby Graham went to the near post, got the flick on, and Chris done very well, breasted it down, kept control, slammed it in. Good goal.
After taking the lead, Liverpool began to sit back, leaving less space for West Ham to exploit on the counter, and so little change for either side as the Reds continued to dominate. Liverpool doubled their lead a quarter of an hour into the second half, with their goal coming from another corner. Ferguson caught Thompson's cross and quickly pumped it long, yet he kicked it straight back to Liverpool, with Smith collecting the ball, pushing forward, picking out Graham with a cross, the forward waiting in the gap between Bobby Howe and Bonds.
Actually, little Bobby Graham gets up very well to a ball, doesn't he?
He does do. He's small, he's only about 5'8", Bobby, but he's spring heels.
Despite their poor form coming into the game, Liverpool never looked in trouble, claiming with 2 points to stay third, 6 points behind leaders Everton. This match would be our introduction to Peplow, but it would also be our goodbye. Peplow's debut would end 20 minutes early after picking up a knock, replaced by Hunt, yet he would recover to play against Leeds a week later. He would then start in the return leg against Vitória Setúbal, only to be substituted at half-time, and that would be his final appearance for Liverpool. There were just so many good players at Liverpool at the time that it was difficult to break into the first team he would later recall. The Scouser would move on to Swindon Town, playing under Dave Mackay in his first managerial role, and would follow the Scot to Nottingham Forest, only to find himself sidelined when Mackay jumped ship again to Derby. Peplow returned to Merseyside, albeit this time across the river at Tranmere Rovers, where he would link up with former teammate Ron Yates. Ron had plans to use me as a central midfielder, but I couldn't tackle rice pudding. He tried me out wide, but it was John King, Ron's successor, who converted me to a right winger. 15 years after he retired, Peplow was presented with a copy of this very match as a wedding present by former Tranmere teammate Barry Mitchell. The cover said something like "Love techniques for the beginner," he recalled. I thought Barry had got hold of a naughty video by way of a joke, but it turned out to be a specially commissioned recording of my debut for Liverpool. Barry had been in touch with Ray Stubbs at the BBC. Ray had been in the reserves at Tranmere when we played, before he moved into broadcasting. Ray got the commentator, John Motson, to dig out the recording of that old Liverpool versus West Ham match. It was on film and they managed to get it transferred to video. It was a wonderful surprise. This match might have been the end of the road for Peplow in our story, but he wasn't the only young player at Liverpool with eyes on a place in the first team. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to support the channel. You can get updates on what I'm doing by following on Twitter and Facebook, links are in the description, but most importantly by supporting Holding Midfield on Patreon. Without financial support, I can't justify the time it goes into making these videos to keep the channel alive while also receiving access to premium content. Thanks for watching.